All right, today's read aloud for Monday, April 6th. So, today, readers, we are going to be reading some nonfiction history, and we're going to be paying attention to main ideas, synthesizing information, and analyzing and critiquing events, people, and interpretations of history. All right, let's get started. So, here's just a reminder of some of the content vocabulary words that we've been coming across. You want to make sure that you're collecting these in your notebook. And so let's get started reading this article. But before we do, we want to make sure we're reminding ourselves of some of our main ideas. So some of the main ideas we have for the Trail of Tears so far are what led up to the Trail of Tears, what was it like on the Trail of Tears, the ways that the Native Americans fought back, and then later on the consequences of the Trail of Tears, and then also this Indian Removal Act, which was the law that sort of made removal legal. Okay, so as usual for our nonfiction reading, we have to have a lens, so we're paying attention to making main ideas and key details, text features, or author's point of view, content vocabulary, of course, and of course text structure. So this is an article I found on Newsela, and it's Time Machine, 1838, the Cherokees and the Trail of Tears. So this, I see in this note, it was printed in the Vermont Telegraph newspaper on April 4th, 1838. And this has 4 different news stories, and they tell the story of Native Americans right before the Trail of Tears. So this is going to be 1838, April 4th. This was right before the Trail of Tears. And this photo they included is kind of interesting. It says in the caption, Elizabeth Brown Stevens, a Cherokee who walked the Trail of Tears in 1838, is pictured in 1903 at the age of 82. So it seems like this is a picture of somebody who was there at the time. But she was obviously much younger because this picture was taken in 1903. So she must have survived. All right. We have received a written copy of a statement of facts that will be presented to the Congress. It will come from the Cherokee Nation of Indians in a week. It has such sad injustice that we want to publish it right away for our readers. The statement of facts is signed by 15,665 Indians. This is the whole Cherokee Nation. It shows the unfair actions of the government agents that resulted in the New Echota Treaty. Right after the treaty was created, the Cherokee Nation protested against it. The Cherokee leaders and the people were not able to add their thoughts. It was the work of a very few. These few people had no permission to represent the tribe. About 60 or 70 people of bad character were brought together for a dinner. Mr. John F. Schermerhorn, the United States Commissioner, set this up. The government, without asking the Cherokee people, approved the treaty. General John Ellis Wool visited the Cherokee Nation, representing the United States. When he returned to Washington, he reported that the New Echota Treaty was not approved by the Cherokee. At a meeting of the Congress, some asked to look into the facts about the New Echota Treaty. However, nothing was done. The result is that the Cherokee will be driven in June next from their safe and comfortable home. They will be removed to a sickly wilderness surrounded by savage tribes. In their statement of facts, they ask for protection. They still trust in the faith, justice, and greatness of the Congress. So this is very interesting. This is a newspaper article. And I think pretty much the main idea of this is talking about what led up to the Trail of Tears. So this is kind of adding on to this main idea that we had previously. But it kind of gives us more detail. First of all, we should note that this is a news report on April 4th of 1838 about the New Echota Treaty. And something that was very interesting is 15,665 Cherokee protested the treaty. And this is some new information. This U.S. Commissioner Schermerhorn, the newspaper is saying that he arranged for 60 to 70 people of bad character to approve the treaty. It says also that there was someone called General Wood who is investigating it, but Congress did nothing to look into the unfairness of the treaty, even though a report came back that the treaty was not approved by the Cherokee. And it also points out that there was a date set for the Cherokee to, quote, be driven from their safe and comfortable home in June of 1839. So that is very, actually I think it's June 1838 since it says in June next. All right. Keep that in mind. Let's read on. The facts from the Cherokee Nation. To the Honorable Senate and House Representatives of the United States in Congress, we, the undersigned people of the Cherokee Nation, have always seen the paper, said to be a treaty made in December 1835 at Newsela by the Reverend John F. Schermerhorn, to be unfair. It insults the Cherokee Nation. Therefore, it has no power over us. At a general meeting of our nation, held at Red Clay in September 1836, we set down our serious protest against it. At another general meeting of the nation, held at Red Clay, August 1837, a letter from the President of the United States was delivered by Colonel John Mayton, Special Agent of the United States. After carefully studying the letter, the feelings of the Council did not change. We thought the President would have more facts on the matter. We thought he would understand the real feelings of the Cherokee people. We thought he would want to change the treaty and work with us to make it more fair. So there's a lot of dates here. And I think it's helpful to organize it on a timeline. So here I have an arrow, and then the first date I have on here is December 1835. That is when this Reverend Schermerhorn signs the Treaty of Newsela. He has those 60 or 70 people of bad character that don't represent the whole tribe signing that treaty. Then it says in 1836 there was a meeting at Red Clay, and that was like the protest of this treaty. And then again, they met in 1837, and they read a letter from the president. And the president, the letter said that they should go, but the opinions of the Cherokee didn't change. They didn't feel that the treaty was very fair. So putting together a timeline of these events is really helpful to help us understand sort of the order of each of these events. Let's read on. Begging the president to listen to their concerns. We then chose a group to represent us before the government of the United States. We gave them full power to make final decisions on all matters. We expected a speedy end to our worries and concerns, but the cup of hope has been taken from our lips, and our future is dark with horror. Our hearts are filled with bitterness, and our language fails. Our tongues cannot speak easily, but we beg you to listen to our worries and fears. With the full details of our troubles, we ask you to listen with patience. Our people that are sent to Washington will be ready to explain all the facts. We therefore respectfully present the following and will show the awful situation in which we are placed by that false and evil agreement. A letter has recently come from the United States addressed to the chiefs, headmen, and people of the Cherokee Nation. We are told that the president refuses to meet with our chief, John Ross. The president will not delay. He forces us to agree to the treaty. The letter says that we will be horribly punished if we refuse to go along with the treaty. Words like these anger and surprise us. What have we done to deserve such treatment? What is our crime? Have we invaded anyone's rights? Have we violated any of our many treaties? Have we acted in bad faith? We have done no such thing. But they say we are being tricked by our leaders. So this is a really heavy accusation here. I'm thinking that this is mostly about the Cherokee are preparing a group to represent them in Washington. And they kind of lay out some interesting details here. So first of all, the president sent a letter to the people, and he refused to meet with their chief, John Ross. It also says that in this letter, the president says that the Cherokee have to agree to this treaty, or else they're going to be horribly punished. And lastly, it says, I think that the Cherokee are really shocked that they're being treated unfairly for no reason. So this is sort of an interesting development leading up to their removal. Do not force us into silence. Our friends, say they, are our worst enemies. It is our dangerous error to believe that the great nation has tricked us. It cannot be. It is a mistake to say that the makers of this evil treaty have no right to hurt us. This fact we are prepared to prove with real evidence. There is the fact that an army is in place to force us to give up. Is it being stubborn to protest? It goes against the first principles of free government. It sets foot on the neck of our liberties and our dearest rights. Are we to be forced into silence for attempting to complain? Is it a crime to trust our chiefs? They are the men of our choice, whom we have found faithful. We ask, who speaks the truth? Surely not those who have made this false and evil treaty by trickery and fraud. They have tricked the leaders of the United States and gotten favors from those in power. And now, before the Congress and before God, we ask if we must give in to these awful evils which will hurt us. Is our country to be made a scene of horrors because we trusted your great empire? Are we to be hunted through the mountains like wild beasts? Will our women, our children, our aged, and our sick be dragged from their homes? Will they be loaded on awful boats and sent to a place of sickness? Already we are surrounded by armed men in forts, camps, and military posts. We see the power of the United States. We know our own weakness. Our only chance is justice and fairness. We ask your judges to understand that our protest against that false treaty, our minds remain unchanged because we can never accept that agreement, and we will still believe that the United States will not force us to follow these cruel, awful orders. Wow, very powerful. So it seems like the Cherokee in this part of the text is they're making the point that the Cherokee have been tricked and they want justice. And they also make the point that U.S. has also been tricked by these people who are just seeking favors from those in power. So that treaty, they're making the point that it's both of them that have gotten tricked, both the Cherokee and the U.S. government. And then they ask the question if the U.S. is going to allow these women, children, and sick and ages to, quote, be hunted through the mountains like wild beasts. And it seems like the Cherokee are only think that their only chance at justice is the fairness of the courts. So it's interesting that even though they see this going on around them, they see it seems like they kind of know what's going to become of them. They are still looking to the courts to sort of try and get them some fairness here. We may be small, but we will not surrender our rights. It is true that we are a weak people, and as regards physical power, we are in the hands of the United States, but we have not given up our rights, and if we fail to pass this on to our sons, the freedom we have gotten from our fathers will be gone forever. With trembling worry and respect, we ask for your powerful protection, shielding us from the horrors of the threatened storm. Will you keep a hope alive that rests on the public faith, the honor and the justice of your mighty empire? We ask for your protection. Cherokee Nation, February 22nd, 1838. Signed by 15,665 of the Cherokee people, as will appear by referring to the original submitted to the Senate of the Cherokee delegation. So this right here is, first of all, they're never going to accept that treaty. They make that point there. But they're not going to give up hope. The Cherokee are not giving up hope. They still believe in the law and they hope to pass the freedom on to their children. And they're asking basically for the protection of the U.S. government here. And it's interesting, this letter was signed on the 22nd of February, 1838. So a lot going on in that moment. Cherokee people want to move themselves. So this seems like another part of the article where that chunk that we just read was kind of about a letter from the Cherokee. This part right here seems to be from the newspaper reporter. It says, the Indians, the Seminole trouble, it appears to be, is to end about the same time the Cherokee War will begin. It is doubted that the Cherokee will agree to the Treaty of Neuchota. They say it is filled with cruelty. A protest was signed by 14,000 of the Cherokee people against the treaty. The treaty was passed by the Senate by one vote. There can be no change unless there is a new treaty. The Cherokee might agree to move beyond the Mississippi if they can be in charge of moving their people themselves. The practice has been to hire men to move the Indians. These men don't care about the comfort and health of the Indians. Some Indians have been blown up in steamboats. They give them little food to eat and push them without shoes or blankets in cold rain on long marches in the wilderness. The weak, old, and sick are left behind on the side of the road. The Cherokee know all this. If they accept the treaty, they know that only half of them will make it to their new home across the Mississippi. The Seminole are also aware that they would lose half their nation if they are moved. So this is interesting in this chunk here. It says, basically, I think the main idea here is that the Cherokee are going to be facing, quote, cruelty and death if they're forced to move. So it seems like they already kind of know what is going to become of them if they're forced to move. Something interesting that I didn't know was that hired men move the Indians, and they really didn't care for their comfort and health. So maybe they had seen already other tribes being moved before, and so they kind of know like how this kind of goes. And and it's just they already know that they're not going to be given very much food or shoes or blankets on this journey, and they're concerned that the weak and old and sick will be left to die by the side of the road. Something else interesting, is that 200 Indians were sunk in a steamboat. It seems like they tried to move them by boat, and 200 of them were killed in that way. Moving on. We should respect wishes of the Cherokees. The Cherokees, an unfair treaty has been made with these civilized sons of the forest. They must give up their lands and be moved west of the Mississippi. They have been against this treaty from the beginning. The treaty says that they must be moved by whites. If they move at all, they want to do it themselves. They know if they will face cruelty and even death from those who would make them money from moving them. They know that 200 were sunk in a steamboat paid to move them. The Cherokee wishes should still be respected. They are as civilized as their neighbors of Georgia, and they are able to move themselves. Still, the government will not change its mind and thinks might makes right. So I think here we're really seeing the author's point of view, sort of the person who is writing this article. You're sort of seeing what their feelings are. And so the author of the article shows not only that the Cherokee were treated unfairly, but they will face brutal treatment if forced to move. And this is kind of ironic because the author of this article, it turns out that they are correct. Because we know from our previous text that we read that a quarter of the Cherokee population, thousands of people, died along the Trail of Tears. So it's interesting to note that, like, even before the Trail of Tears happened, in terms of the Cherokees' journey, they already know what's going to become of them. And yet nobody does anything to stop this from happening. Not the U.S. Government, and certainly not anyone else. All right, so something I want to make sure that we're doing is keeping track of the timeline of these events that led up to the Cherokee removal along the Trail of Tears. So we have this moment, 1835, when the new Treaty of New Echota is signed, and then there was two meetings, one in 1836 and then one in 1837, where the Cherokees protested this treaty. And in the second one, the president, a letter from the president of the United States was read, basically saying that they should go along with this treaty, but the Cherokee did not agree with this. And then we have in February 1838, that letter that we read, that was sent to the U.S. Senate from the Cherokee delegation. And then here is this newspaper article in April of 1838, where it was published in like the newspapers here. And so we know in June of 1838, the Cherokee were forced to move along the Trail of Tears to these unknown lands west of the Mississippi. All right, that's all for our read aloud for now. Bye.